All right. Hi, everyone. So good to see many of you that I've seen before. Welcome to all our new folks. All right. Today we are making a dish called chickpea and herb fatteh. And it is a Middle Eastern dish, and it's one of those things that's kind of like curry. It can look really different depending on what country you are in and where you see it, right? So it's different in Palestine than it is in Egypt, and it's definitely the Middle Eastern countries that are sort of around the Mediterranean area, like North African, Middle East countries. And, like many sort of like food traditions, it's a bit of the like bits and bobs of crusty leftover bread, right? What do we do with bread? It doesn't, we didn't have plastic bags and preservatives and all of that kind of stuff. And so bread goes stale. It's sort of a regular thing that you make. So coming up with dishes that utilize, crusty bits of leftover thing and bits of herbs and that sort of thing is the beauty of this dish. So I will go ahead and say many of the recipes that I share with you guys, I have written or I've adapted. In this case, this is directly from New York Times Cooking, which if you have a New York Times subscription, you also, I think, get the cooking stuff, and their recipes are very well edited and well tested, and I really, really love them. And then we're going to make a quote-unquote donut hole. And it's very similar to other sort of like date nut balls, but I really thought the flavor profile was interesting and different. I feel like a lot of them end up going in a chocolate direction, and if you're not a chocolate person, this was sort of a fun different flavor profile, and I'll also talk about some of the different ingredients that I've subbed in there or that I'm playing with today. All right, so to get us started, the first section of your instructions spends a lot of time talking about cooking chickpeas. Do not fret. You do not have to cook chickpeas from dry if you do not feel like you have the capacity for that or the time for that. This is canned chickpeas. And it's going to work just fine. So you get the ingredient that's the baking soda, salt and pepper piece. That is if you were cooking them from dry. If you're making your own hummus from scratch, you can do it straight out of the can from chickpeas. If you want it to be that like ethereal, sort of like dreamy, velvety, smooth sort of stuff that you can only find sometimes at restaurants, giving them depending on your chickpeas, some brands you can find are just more tender, but if they have a little crunch to them, just cook them a little longer, and you could even do that in the microwave. So this dish is one that really wants the chickpeas to be like about to succumb, right? So I've cooked, and another great thing if you are not, if you're playing around with chickpeas, and you are a pressure cooker user, Instant Pot user, that is going to give you some really lovely tender beans and chickpeas. A beautiful thing about pressure cooking is that it's really shines when you want something to just be soft and tender and smooth. So whether it's beets or something else that just takes a long time, a sweet potato even, that can be like fibrous, pressure cooking is a really great thing. So all I've done here to start with is dump open some cans of chickpeas and let them hang out on a simmer for a little while. So that's, well, you're probably not going to be cooking for 22 people. I would say that one 15.5 ounce can is going to be 1.5 cups of cooked chickpeas. And then another conversion, what's that? No, actually, in this case, I put them with their liquid in there because I want that liquid, so I didn't drain them. And there's a lot of bean lore. Well, let me give you one more conversion. 3 ounces of dried chickpeas equals 1 cup of cooked chickpeas. All right, and then that canned conversion again was a 15.5 ounce can, which is your standard can, is going to be 1.5 cups of cooked chickpeas. While the chickpeas are cooking, we're going to prepare the toppings. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is our pita. I pre-did a lot of the pita because I wasn't exactly sure how many people were going to show up today, and I didn't want too much or too little, so I'm just going to show you on one piece. I've got my oven preheated over there. You can do this however you want. You can cut it in half, quarters, thirds. This is just pre-bought or store-bought whole wheat pita. Any sort of other flatbread or naan or anything like that you see. So I'm going to just give this a little brush with some olive oil just to get our seasonings to stick on there, and because it's yummy. And then we're going to give it a little sprinkle of salt, and then a sprinkle of za'atar. So let's talk about za'atar, because I had this in my pantry already. And usually I'll buy things for here, and it's not always so easy to find. And I'll tell you what you can do if you can't find it. So za'atar is the name of both the herb and the blend. So this is actually a blend, right? The herb is a Mediterranean herb. It's very similar to oregano. So I've seen some recipes that use dried thyme, some recipes that use dried oregano. I've seen recipes that just had salt, thyme, toasted sesame seeds, and a little drop or two of olive oil just to, sort of combine it all. So that's one option. This particular version has the herb za'atar, toasted sesame seeds, sumac, which is sometimes a little easier to find than za'atar. So sumac has a sort of tart, citrus acid, almost sort of quality to it. This particular one came from Turkey. It's used in a lot of different Middle Eastern. Sometimes at some Middle Eastern restaurants, they'll sprinkle sumac on their hummus and olive oil. But it just gives things sort of a bright, fresh citrus flavor. But again, if you don't have any of that, but you've got a little dried thyme or a little dried oregano and some sesame seeds, it's going to give you very similar vibes. So do not fear. But I thought, since I had it, I would share that with you. All right, so we're just going to throw this in the oven and get a little color on it. Because I was doing enough for 20-something people earlier, I went ahead and put this on broil. Set a timer for 2 minutes. So we're going to hustle through it fast. All right. So while that is going, we're going to work on our tahini sauce. So, I got to stay out here. All right. So I've already got a little bit of chopped garlic in there because we're doing a larger version of it. But just for those of you who haven't hung out with me before, when I'm mincing up garlic and I'm going to use it in a sauce, maybe it's a vinaigrette, maybe it's something especially where it's not going to be cooked and you don't want to chomp down on a big old bite of garlic, but you also don't want to spend all day mincing it until it's teeny tiny. I learned this technique from Chef Virginia Willis at a conference she was speaking at. She's a Atlanta-based chef. So I'm just going to take my garlic. I'm going to chop off that little end. We're going to give it a smash to get the papery stuff off. All right. And then from here, right, we're going to put a little sprinkle of salt on it. Because what that's going to do is, as I start chopping, it's going to, osmosis is going to take hold, and all of the moisture and liquid from inside the cells of the garlic are going to start to give over, right? So we're just going to give it a little chop. I left a little paper piece. We're going to give it a little chop like normal, okay? And that might be all you got time for. And then we're going to take it and put it in a little pile, and we're going to start just smashing it with the side of the knife, right? Continuing to chop a little bit, get those big pieces, and then just smash it, right? Like it's a palette knife. Could you use a garlic press? Sure. Do you like cleaning garlic presses? I don't. So I find, especially if you're just doing 1 or 2 cloves for a home amount of a recipe, you end up with this beautiful paste, right? It's kind of, and then you can just like scrape it all up on your knife like that, right? All right, back to it. All right, so we're just going to slide that down in there. All right, so we've got our garlic. We're going to add a little bit of lemon juice here. I always like to roll my lemons first, and I usually also, usually when I'm zesting, I'm going to try to spiral it around so that I can get the most rather than sort of jib-jabbing all over the place. All right, so we're just going to spin the lemon as we go so that you get the most of it. With lemon zest, all of the good volatile organic compounds that make it smell and taste really yummy are just in that outside shiny part. Once you get to the pith, starts to get bitter. All right, so back to tahini sauce. All I've done is taken tahini, added the lemon juice, added our garlic that was already in there, a little bit of salt. I want it to be a little saucier, and sometimes tahini is more separated than others, so I'm going to add a little bit more water to it. I'm also going to taste it in a second. We could also consider adding more lemon juice to it, just because I want it sort of saucy. So tahini, of course, if you're not familiar, is peanut butter is to peanuts, right? You took sesame seeds, ground them up, that's tahini. And it is most often, most people are using it if you're making hummus at home. So hummus is basically chickpeas and olive oil and tahini. There we go, that's a little looser. All right, so that's ready to go. We're gonna set that aside. And then our last little component is our chili oil. So we're just all right, so we're going to heat up our olive oil. Again, I'm having to multiply the recipe 4 or 5 times. But we're just going to let that oil heat up a little bit. It won't take long until it's starting to get a little like shimmer on the outside. And then this is up to you. If you don't want things to be spicy at all, and if I'm cooking for my 7-year-old, not a flake of chili powder, crushed red pepper is going to get into things. This is where, you might have that jar of paprika that you use for deviled eggs and nothing else. This could be a way to use them up, although if it's been sitting in your pantry for a long time, it probably doesn't have much flavor anymore. But this is sweet paprika. I use a lot of smoked paprika, and I love that, and that would work well here as well. For this recipe, I've used sweet paprika. I don't know if you can see on the camera that it's starting to get a little shimmery on top, and so we are going to add just a little of our paprika and a little of our red pepper flakes. We'll keep it kind of mild for folks today. A little salt, a little pepper. Again, this is olive oil. You do want to watch your heat on the olive oil. I'm going to go ahead and lower this a little bit because these induction burners go high real fast. Give it a little stir, just enough to sort of infuse the oil with the flavors of the herbs. We're really not needing to cook anything. We just really want the flavor to sort of permeate the oil. You could use another oil, a higher heat oil if you want to. Olive oil is just very traditional in Mediterranean, Middle Eastern cuisine, and so we like the flavor. When I put my dietitian hat on, we love the fatty acid profile of olive oil, but you just want to make sure that you're not getting it to the smoke point, and being gentle with that. So that's it for the chili oil. So last step, and I have thought a couple times about how to do this for a crowd, and now that we only have half the screen, all right, here's what we're going to do. So I worked ahead a little bit on some of this. The last thing we're going to do is take our herbs. Today we're using chives, cilantro, and parsley. I've just washed them. I'm going to give them just a little bit of a chop to give them a head start on breaking down. I think it tells you to do this in a blender. You could do it in a blender. The choice that I'm making today, if you have an immersion blender, is to just dump everything in a separate pot and do it that way. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take some of the chickpeas and some of the broth that's in here. This is sort of why you want the broth. And we're essentially going to use that liquid and broth to make a sauce that'll get sort of stirred back in to incorporate all of these herbs. back in. So getting a little chickpeas in there is just going to give it a little bit more thick body. So I'm just going to start little by little handfulling these herbs down in here. Until they start to break down, and then I can just handful more in. And if it seems like you need a little more liquid to get things moving, you can always just ladle a little bit more liquid in there, or tip it to the side a little bit. There, now you get to decide at this point, right? Or when you're getting used to making this, sort of like how thick you want this. If you want it a little looser, don't put as many chickpeas in here. If you want it a little thicker with more body, add more chickpeas, and that'll just thicken everything up. And then we're just going to put everything back together. So I'm going to put both of these because this is the chickpeas for everyone. And we'll give it a stir to get everything incorporated in. And then this is looking a little loose because of the amount, so I'm going to add a little more chickpeas to this guy over here to get it thicker. All right. And then, as always, we're gonna put all this back together, and then we're gonna taste and adjust, right? Like if a recipe is not working the way you want it to work, taste and adjust. We can fix most things if we're not liking how it's going. So sometimes it's as simple as just needing a little bit more salt. Sometimes you're like, gosh, I've added a lot of salt. I don't want to keep adding more salt. It's feeling a little flat. And that's where I would say acid ingredients would be your next way to go. So maybe it's a little more lemon juice. Maybe it's vinegar. Those are going to add a little bit of brightness that sometimes you might be like, I don't want it to be tangy. Sometimes a little acid does the same thing that salt does, which I once heard salt described in cooking as making things taste more like themselves, right? It just sort of like amplifies everything. It doesn't, it's not trying to be too much of its own thing. And sometimes a little bit of acid can do the same thing, right? It can just make things taste a little brighter without being like a big tangy thing. Yeah, so you guys can see it. Thank you for the reminder. There we go. So now you can see it's soupy. And again, you can sort of figure out if you want it to be more like a stew, whether you want it to be soupier. I like it to have a little bit of body to it. And like I said, just like with curry, you're going to find as many different versions as variations of this as, I wish I knew the Middle Eastern word for like the grandmother, right? The like grandmother that's cooking in her kitchen, they've all got their own version. So let me grab my tasting spoons and we'll figure out what direction this needs to go. Put that anywhere. Let's also get a chickpea and a new salt. And it needs heat because it's been sitting. We're going to get cooked up a little bit more. All right, salt. I also think it needs a little more lemon juice. So we're going to do both of those things. Ooh. We'll grab a couple of lemons. I'm going to bring this back over here. This has been an equipment adventure. Thank you today for bearing with me. In some ways, maybe I'm like glad that the microphone's probably not working because I don't know that this is going to be a great YouTube experience for viewers at home. All right, we'll do one more lemon taste, and then we can always add another one. Oh, and then I need to change my burner. There we go. All right. I think it needs a little bit more salt and one more lemon. Then we got it. Yeah, and then it kind of inverts it. I find you can get more juice out that way, and then also, yeah, it's just going the direction you want it to go. I know it's more intuitive in a way to match it to the shape of the lemon or the lime. And sometimes if I'm really trying to like get the goodie out of something, I'll double it up in there, and you can still even see how much more I can get out of there. Or if you're like eking it out, you're trying to measure something, maybe you're baking or something, and you're like, ooh, I just need like 2 more teaspoons. It's good for your grip strength. Another fun story, my grip strength on my right hand is a little off right now because on Memorial Day, my partner and I both have 12 and 7-year-olds, and we had an impromptu field day where we played tug-of-war with the kids. At one point, I was against 2 12-year-olds and 2 7-year-olds by myself. So I thought that was a good idea. I did beat them, but I also injured my hand. There it is. Beautiful. Yeah, so my grip strength in my right hand. I didn't tell them that I injured my hand. We have to protect the balance of power in the household. So that's ready to go. We'll serve it up in just a little bit, but essentially you just got your a bowl of this, a drizzle, spoon swirl in of this, a drizzle of this, and some pita chips. So we're just gonna let this hang out for a minute, and then we'll start plating it up. This recipe here, I highly recommend you make with a food processor. You can make it with a blender, but you're going to fight with it because blenders are they just do a better job at liquefying things, right? Like when you've got enough liquid in there to get everything moving. And dates are like glue in the bottom of a blender. The food processor here is not working, and I gave the blender a real run for its money, and it might not be working anymore. But that's okay, because we get to model making it in a mini chopper, which might be the amount that you need to make, right? If you're just cooking for you or you and somebody else, and you just need a little snack. Dates, great, easy. Walnuts or cashews. I'm doing just cashews today. I've done it with both. I've done it with one. I've done it with the other before. Almond flour. Coconut flour. So I have not made it with coconut flour because I don't find that it's very easy to find. So usually I will sub in extra almond flour, but I started thinking about flaxseed meal for a couple of reasons, because again, when I put my dietitian hat on, I get real excited about the fatty acid profile in flax seeds. And I also thought, excuse me, flaxseed, once you grind it, does have a shelf life, right? It'll last as just the seeds for a long time. The seeds are lovely. You're not getting much access to any of the fatty acids if you are just eating the seeds, because they're not very digestible. So they're not going to hurt you, but you're not going to get what you think you're getting out of them unless you are grinding it. So if you're buying flaxseed that's pre-ground, it's not going to, go bad right away, but it's not going to last in your pantry for years, and so it's just more susceptible to going rancid. Freezing is going to make it last a little bit longer for sure, but it's just, the fatty acids in this are just a little bit more volatile than they are in other nuts and seeds. But so that's another reason I had a big container of flaxseed in my pantry, and I was like, I put it in smoothies a lot for my kids and myself at home. So yeah, instead of the coconut flour, which you could totally use, or you could even use shredded coconut if you wanted that coconut flavor, I'm gonna substitute the same amount of ground flaxseed today. Where's my lemon zester? Here we go. All right. I also find not so much in a regular food processor, the order of operations that you put the ingredients in doesn't matter so much. If you're trying it in a blender, I would put the dates in last. I would get everything else incorporated in, and then like a couple of dates at a time. Again, you're going to have just much better success if you do this in a food processor or a tiny food processor like we have here, a mini chopper. All right, so, and with this, because the volume is small, I'm going to give my cashews, those are not almonds, a head start so that we don't end up with cashew butter. Pulses work best. And then it also just depends on how smooth and homogeneous you want your end product to be. Maybe you want it to be really smooth. Maybe you want it to be a little more rustic. So you can kind of choose your own adventure there. All right, so in this case right here in front of you guys, I am halving the recipe because of the tiny amount that we have here. So this is half a cup of my dates. That's actually too many. That is a full cup of cashews. There we go. All right, so then we're just going to add in everything else and keep pulsing until we get what we want. So 3/4 a cup of our almond flour. This is not like baking. You do not have to be precious about your measurements. It's not a chiffon cake where you need to weigh everything out. And then we'll do our zest. And then we will do our juice. Come back down here to cut it. Again, like I said, in a lot of these types of recipes, I see a lot of chocolate flavors, which don't get me wrong, I love. But when I saw the lemon poppy seed one, I thought, that's exciting. I like that. Also great for summer flavors, although, citrus is in season in the wintertime. Oh, we can get things at the grocery store all the time around here. Have you guys ever grown citrus, lemon, or lime trees at home in a pot? Have you had success with it? It's worked well? The limes tend to do a little better. Yeah, so it turns out, I learned from the Department of Agriculture last year in Georgia that it won't be long until we are producing more oranges in Georgia than peaches. South Carolina's outrun us on peaches for a long time now, but our climate in South Georgia is getting to where we're more successful with citrus. So who knows? In Atlanta, in a few years, we might be, I do have a lemon and a lime tree in pots, and you have to take them inside. They don't work outside. And yeah, mixed results with the lemon. Some years it's great, some years it's not. But yeah, when they're coming right off the tree, that is like the zestiest zest that ever zested. It's amazing. Okay, so we're gonna do a roughly 1 1/4 teaspoon of poppy seeds. You could do chia seeds if you have those hanging around. The thing that we like about chia seeds too, honestly, if you were trying this in your blender and you needed to add more moisture to it, I would add chia seeds because they have that mucilaginous quality to them that which flaxseed does as well, right? It sort of gels, so it's going to bind a little bit better. And then we're going to do a teaspoon of vanilla. And then, yeah, yes. See, that's doing exactly what you want it to do, right? It's starting to mince up. And then it's going to sort of get a little bit more cohesive. And you might have to pop it open and poke a spoon at it a little bit to get everything in here. I've gotten really close to the maximum on what you can fit in this tiny little chopper. Yeah, we're just going to try to get it down in there. And if you have to have a couple tablespoons of water. Sometimes you have to have a couple tablespoons of water. I forgot that the food processor here has been on the fritz when I decided to do this recipe. That was almost as awkward as putting gloves on with wet hands. So really what you want to see, how you know things are being successful, is when you have continuous movement of everything. What's frustrating is when it's like a bunch of stuff at the top and just like at the bottom. There's one more date in here that I really want it to break down. And that's the other thing. Sometimes your dates, and I pitted these myself, so I handled them earlier. Some of them are really, really smooth and just like, and some of them are a little more dry and firm. All right, so then the last thing we're going to do is just roll them up. Now, to make it more donut hole-ish, another step that you could take, and is in the recipe, is to melt a little bit of coconut oil and mix it with the sweetener, and then dip all of your balls in that coconut oil and chill them, and it's going to have sort of a frosted look to it. And I have done that before. And the problem that I find with that I felt like it didn't give me, like, it's cute and it's going to read donut hole that way. But the sweetener, there's one date that just, it's okay. The sweetener just is liquid, and coconut oil is fat, and there was nothing to homogenize them. So it just ended up seeming like you were just adding just a layer of coconut oil, which is fine. I just felt like it wasn't giving me much more, right? Yeah. So anyway, yeah, there you go. Through the magic of TV, you don't have to sit and watch me roll all of these because we did it earlier. I'm going to go ahead and plate up our finished plate and invite my colleagues back in so that we can serve you lunch. Questions? I know you guys ask questions throughout, but any other questions before we plate everything up? All right.
Thank you for joining Cancer Support Community Atlanta for this program. If you're interested in other live or recorded programs, please visit the online program tab of our website, cscatlanta.org, or follow us on Facebook. We'll be sharing additional information on upcoming programs.